Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked on Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. LeBron James says he's better than 90, maybe 95% of the league. Is he right? And is that good enough? That's next.
You are Locked on Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked on Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you're getting your podcast. It's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And Locked on Lakers on YouTube, so we can go hang out with over 17,000 subscribers to that channel, all of whom are excited about a big offseason with real potential for the Lakers following this run to the Western Conference Finals. We do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Obviously, Andy, with the excitement of exit interviews in the rearview mirror, a lot of attention being paid to the possibility that LeBron James might retire. But let's assume for a second he does come back. One of the things that was in that article from Dave McMenamin, one of the many pieces of reporting on this possible retirement, was LeBron James saying to Dave that he believes that he is still better than 90 to 95% of the league. You know, that's one reason why he might want to come back and keep playing. He's got a lot left to give. It's not because he doesn't feel like there's no washed king here. This to me is interesting on a ton of levels. The first one is an admission there that he is not the best. Like there's sort of an implicit thing there where he's saying I'm better than 90 to 95% of the league. By definition, he's not saying I am the best player. And for a long time, that was his position, and he was correct, I think. But I think there is an acknowledgement in that okay, I'm probably not the best player night in and night out in the league anymore. I thought that was something that struck me as interesting.
Well, I mean, that was pretty much already there when he talked about having to consider his future in the game in the first place. Like if he were still able to perform on a game in, game out, 35 to 40 minute basis as the best player in the game, there would be nothing to think about other than just trying to explain how he is this medical and scientific marvel who can manage to do this at age 38 and still be indisputably the best. But you know what I mean? Like it's a tacit admission of that. Otherwise, there would be nothing to even genuflect over at all.
Yeah.
He's just coming back because why wouldn't he? Because he's
it's just but even as when he
it's a vulnerability.
There's been some debate. There's been some debate, at least a little bit, on like where LeBron is relative to the best players in the league from when the Lakers acquired him until now. And LeBron, certainly when the Lakers acquired him, his public position, and I'm sure his internal belief was there is no player in the NBA that is better than me. And time and results and health and all that stuff, I think, has shaved a little bit of that off. And I just found it interesting that he was kind of conceding that point. The other part, obviously, that people latched onto is the idea that he's better than 90 to 95% of the league. And if you start breaking it down, I don't think there's any question he is better than 9 out of every 10 players in the NBA. I'll concede to him that he's in the top 95% of the league. When you start to like really look at how many players are there, any argument with like where he puts himself in the league right now?
No, I mean, somewhere between 95 to, somewhere between 90 to 96 or whatever. I think it is accurate. What I found interesting about
it puts him well into the top 20 is basically what that says.
Well, it depends on 90 versus 95.
95, I'm saying.
95 would put him at around 22, 23, something like that, or higher. 90 puts him at around 45. There's approximately 450 players in the NBA. If he is in that top 10%, that would make him in at least in the top, say, 45. What I found interesting about this isn't like the idea of where exactly you land LeBron on that, as far as like number 8 versus number 12 versus number 7. Like, I couldn't give less of a bleep about landing on the exact number.
Right.
What I did find interesting, though, was the idea of what that exactly means to be in the top 90% versus the top 95%.
Versus the top 98. Like, because I think most people, to finish setting up your point, like, most people would agree, yeah, LeBron's probably a top 10 guy, top 15 at the very worst. When you look around the league, just put up 40 points and near triple double in game 4. Like, nobody disputes that he's still really, really effective. But to your point,
well, I was just thinking about this in terms of what it takes to be, the guy on a championship team, sort of the center of it that everything is built around, versus the high-end number 2 versus a key player on a championship team. And thinking about this also through the specific context of, even if for LeBron the talent is still there, and I don't think anybody would dispute that, the ability to summon it at its highest peak whenever he needs it, and the availability, that is not there. And again, that is something that LeBron is even conceding, because again, if that wasn't the case, there would be nothing to think about with his future, or at least present as thinking about with his future, because it wouldn't make any sense if you're
right. You and I are taking at least the possibility that he actually is talking about really retiring more seriously, I think, than other people. But we are still obviously also very aware that it can be a lot of other things, from fatigue to leverage to any other number.
We just don't think it has to be one thing and one thing only. It can be a bunch of different things. And LeBron is also at a place where naturally you would be thinking about this stuff. But like the Ringer, for example, they have an NBA rankings that they work on, that's fluid. And, none of this is the definitive Bible, but it does provide a certain blueprint. And I was looking at, say, top 45 for the top 10% of the league. They have 45 Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is a very good NBA player who we have seen definitionally can be a key part of a championship team. I think when Golden State won in 2022, he was the second best player, second most important player on that team. Certainly was the second most productive in terms of just statistical production. Andrew Wiggins is nowhere close to good enough to be like the centerpiece of a championship team. He can be a key part of it, but nowhere close. Then you start looking at like the top 5%, and they have at 22 Paul George. Paul George is a really, really good player when he's healthy on both sides of the ball. He can absolutely, I think, assuming he can be part of a team that actually stays healthy, I think Paul George can absolutely be a part of deep playoff runs, maybe a championship run, a key part of it. Paul George is not good enough to be a number 1. Paul George has even said.
I was about to say, who the source on that is Paul George.
Right.
He's told you as much.
So that right there is sort of the baseline for the top 5% of the league, roughly. Paul George.
Okay, so hold this thought here for a second, because how you're framing this is I think critically important for thinking about all of these questions. We started talking about it on Thursday's show, for example, with D'Lo, with D'Angelo Russell, and whether the Lakers should bring him back and at what price, and how good is he relative to the rest of the league, and the type of roster that you have to build around him, which is relevant for the whole, strip it down for Kyrie thing, or run it back, as your two basic options. How you're framing this, especially with LeBron, is critical. So let's get to that next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by Game Time. And years ago, some friends of mine and I, we went to go see LL Cool J at the old, now defunct House of Blues in LA. Really last minute, didn't know how to get tickets, got them from a scalper. Turned out they were fake. Managed to kind of luck our way into the building. But after that, I was like, I'm never going through the scalper route again. Never going to go through the last minute tickets route again. And you don't have to. at least not without some confidence if you're using Game Time. It's the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports and music and comedy shows in theater near you. And with killer deals on last-minute tickets that will be real and the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun. And they offer things like images of the seat views, the lowest price guarantee, the event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and the Game Time guarantee means you will always have the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, just 2 taps. The tickets go directly to your phone, and then you're set. So snag the tickets without the stress using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, then redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Okay, so in the open of the show, I kind of put a couple questions out there when we noted that quote from LeBron, better than 90 to 95% of the league. First one was, is he correct? The answer is yes. The second question is the one, though, that's really interesting as it pertains to the Lakers in this offseason is it good enough for him to be, better than 95? And the answer is, I think, sort of what you're getting at here, which is, well, it kind of depends.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I even started thinking about this before we even get to where LeBron ends up on this list and starting to think about the people around him comparatively, all that stuff is, I think fans and I think NBA media, I think sometimes even maybe players themselves can underestimate just how hard it is to win championships or to be the guy on a championship team. And, conversely, I think they sometimes undervalue the importance of somebody who can be the third best player on a championship team. Like, those guys are.
Yeah, we'll get to that. There was a couple of interesting comments that were left regarding Russell in our show for Thursday.
Like,
that get to that.
The third banana on a championship team, somebody proven that they can do that. Like your Chris Bosh's, your Klay Thompson's, the role that Lamar Odom had with the Lakers and the back-to-back runs with Kobe and Powell. Like, those players are in the high end of, the pecking order when it comes to just how good you have to be. It's really hard. But anyway, in terms of LeBron, found LeBron on this list. He is listed at 12, which would put him, I guess, somewhere around the upper 3% of that, 5% that he claims he's still in. The players around him, again, this is just the Ringers ranking. It's nothing definitive, but gives you a blueprint. Anthony Davis at 10, Devin Booker at 11, Bron at 12, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 13, Damian Lillard 14, Donovan Mitchell 15. Their abilities as players that you feel definitively confident as the player that can be built around for a championship team. Obviously, the pieces around them matter. You need high-end talent, all those caveats. But there is still that layer of the guy you feel confident as the focal point and everything that comes with it. That baseline's so damn high, man. Like, it's really high. And then with LeBron specifically, there's all those layers of complications of age, availability, what it means to be doing this 3 rounds in, 4 rounds in. It's really, really hard.
And I think, there's no question. There's a certain amount of talent is required, and that talent can be expressed in pure scoring. It can be in defense.
Joel Embiid is number 4 on this list, and nobody would dispute that he could be like the 4th best player in the NBA. But there are a lot of people wondering whether or not Joel Embiid actually can be the centerpiece of a championship team.
Well, Giannis did it, and then he did it but then they got eliminated in the first round this year. Did Giannis suddenly get too crappy to carry a team? There are so many things that go into this, like you were talking about. And for the Lakers in particular, LeBron, I don't think there's any question, in short spurts, in a series, not even over 7 games in a 7-game series, he's going to pick his spots even in over the course of 7 games, whether that's from game to game or within games. Especially if the NBA is going to continue doing this every other day thing, which is just insane. Like from in any individual game, and this is true of anybody in that top 15. This is why these rankings and the people who obsess over them, usually fans, I think lose the point here, because on any given day, Damian Lillard can be the best player in the NBA. Like, we've seen him do shocking things on a court.
He's hit series
to the Lakers. Right?
No, I'm just saying he's had 2 series winning walk-off shots.
Yes.
Like, he clearly is capable of doing great things.
He has broken up teams.
But Damian Lillard also, we've seen, like, there is help required, as great as he is as a scorer and a playmaker and a leader.
Right. That's why, I like tiers as much as anything. And LeBron is an interesting, hard player to tier, because his game-to-game ability is different than his 82 game availability, which is like all of these things. And so if you're going to build a team around LeBron, you need, and this is why the D'Lo conversation, for example, the run it back versus strip it down for Kyrie conversation, all these things, to get LeBron to a play, like, there's no question. I have been, to say the least, skeptical of the idea of doing things to bring Kyrie Irving to the Lakers. Have been
Kyrie, by the way, he's happy
ahead.
to hear that, Brian, because Kyrie would prefer, he went on Instagram a couple days ago to let everybody know he is tired of the rumors and the speculation and all these people hyper obsessing over what team he's going to be a part of. Part of what he told his fans on Instagram, quote, "Stop mentioning me on Twitter. All y'all fan bases, stop mentioning me right now, please. It's still the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Can y'all please leave me the F out of this? Please, can I just be with my family in peace? Y'all got people at my dinner table discussing what my free agent plans are. Stop that. Y'all think it's funny? Please stop that. Like, I actually like having peace of mind when I'm at the crib. I see y'all mentions. I see y'all stuff. I see y'all be saying. I see y'all fan bases. I get it. And I'm just as excited as y'all are, but you got to chill. All y'all fan bases, stop mentioning me for just the next month or 2 or 3, whenever I make my decision." This, of course, is coming on the heels of Kyrie Irving, at least twice that I'm aware of, actively, knowingly fueling the gossip by showing up to Laker playoff games every time D'Angelo Russell just happens to be struggling. And look, I want to just make this clear. I get why Kyrie does this, and I have no problem with him doing it, because part of this is a leverage play to not even just the Lakers, to Dallas, to anybody that could
to get a full max and all these other things that he wants.
Like, more power to Kyrie doing this. I have no problem with Kyrie showing up to Laker games to generate interest, to mind bleep D'Angelo Russell into a bad game. So, D'Angelo, if that actually happened, if D'Angelo Russell is even aware of it, it's on him to be strong enough. All I'm saying, though, is if you're going to troll, lean into the trolling. Like, have fun with the trolling. Like, don't troll, then complain that you're getting the reaction that you're trying to get by trolling. Like, that's the worst kind of troll. And honestly, it's a habit Kyrie has when he trolls.
Well, he's a provocateur who gets upset when people get provoked.
Right. I have no problem with him showing up to the games. Do your thing. But come on, man.
The other thing I would say is if you feel like the people at your dinner table are talking too much about your free agency, invite different people to dinner. But anyway,
you probably bought the dinner. You're allowed to dictate the dinner conversation. It was probably,
I happen to agree with you.
Probably on Kyrie. He's known for being generous. So dictate
dinner
terms.
But back to this LeBron thing. When we get back from we'll take a break, and when we get back, I want to kind of talk about why this question of where LeBron is and whatever is so critical for how the Lakers think about roster construction, because the answers to those questions that we asked at the top of the show are directly related to how the Lakers ought to consider the type of team that they put together for next year. So we'll do that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the makers of shorts and pants that feature the future of comfort, which is built in underwear. It's kind of like a layer of boxer brief that's one with the clothing stitched inside the shorts of the pants. They call it Comfort Kingdom, and you can rule this land in your Bird Dogs. You can look better. You can feel great while wearing the Bird Dogs. The stretchy fabric makes your legs, my legs, everybody's legs look great, and they are comfier than other shorts or pants. They got versatility. You can wear the same pants or shorts on a golf course, on a work meeting, on a date, all in the same day if you want. Perfect tire for grilling. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be doing that over this long weekend. They're forgiving in the midsection if you need a little more stretch, a little more room, and you can still look great in the process. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. And when you enter the promo code LockedOnNBA, they will throw in a free custom Bird Dogs style Yeti tumbler with every order. Look at this. It's really, really nice in and of itself, worth the order. I use mine all the time. So get yours, get some shorts or pants, get some Bird Dogs.
Okay. So a couple housekeeping things here. Lakers draft workouts are beginning. That's today, and some people are in the building. You've got your Maxwell Lewis and your Adam Fleglers and your Leonard Millers all in the building, among others. And this is going to be something that goes on for really up through the draft. The Lakers obviously have a first round pick, and then a pick again in the second round, somewhere around, I think it's like 47 or something like that.
It is 47.
And so we'll obviously crank up the draft coverage and the scouting reports and all that stuff as we get closer to the draft, and it becomes to get a little more clarity on who the Lakers are really zeroing in on. But it does point, Andy, to, and it's related to the conversation with LeBron, like what they're planning on doing with this pick, whether it's to actually select a human being to come join their team, a young person, to try to draft and potentially even play next year, whether they're going to try to package that into a trade. It is one of the many live possibilities that Rob Pelinka carries into this offseason based on what he did at the deadline in reshuffling the roster and making it so they have all of these potential contracts to either bring back or trade or whatever. But it kind of only works that way if you actually do lean into the idea of, something along the lines of kind of running it back. And, and we'll talk about that, a lot over the summer, but like why this matters to LeBron, if you're going to put your playoff hopes on LeBron James in part and Anthony Davis in large part or whatever, you need the best version of those guys that you can possibly get going into the postseason. To get there, you need a team that is going to be capable of staying in the top 3, top 4, whatever it might be, provide the type of load management that everybody's going to want to be able to have, and all that. So you're not scrambling over the last 2.5 months just to make sure you have a decent spot in the playoffs. For the Lakers to do that, they're going to need to go 12 or 13 deep. I don't see how you can, on the one hand, say LeBron James is a core piece of our championship recipe, and then gut your team depth as if the 82 games that get you to the playoffs don't matter.
Yeah. I mean, that's when let's just say, for the sake of argument, you think D'Angelo Russell is purely a regular season player. I don't agree, but let's just run with that premise. It still matters for those 82 games. So if he can be very helpful in the 82 games, and then you have to worry about the playoffs once you're there, if that's the cost of doing business when it comes to having LeBron his relatively freshest possible, then that is, at least to me, worth the cost of doing business.
Same thing at a smaller expense with Jared Vanderbilt, who showed himself to be a potentially vulnerable playoff player, but a guy who's incredibly valuable during the regular season.
Yeah, it's also, really important when you think about somebody like Max Christie, who is going to be playing in the summer league. And I know we're both going to be really interested in seeing how he looks, because the summer league can be very revealing when it comes to second-year players. Like if a rookie struggles during summer league, which was what happened with Max Christie, he frankly looked awful in the summer league. It doesn't necessarily matter. And frankly, his regular season was much better than I thought it would be based off his summer league. Like even his preseason, I was like, wow, this kid's gotten a lot better in like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
When second year players, even the ones that don't play a ton in the regular season, when they struggle in the summer league, that can be a little alarming. And I think Christie's going to have a real opportunity for a role this upcoming year. So that's definitely going to be something else to keep an eye on.
Hey, he's also apparently gotten taller, he said.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
He told Dave McMenamin was on Zach Lowe's The Low Post podcast, part of the ESPN NBA coverage. Everybody should listen to that one. But after Max's exit interview, Dave McMenamin just walked up to him and told him, have a good summer, exchange some pleasantries, that stuff. But he noticed that Max looked taller to him. And he asked him if he grew during the season, and Max said that he did. He didn't give the exacts, but that in and of itself is noteworthy. Like an extra inch or so could make the difference in, where you can be slotted to play.
Oh, yeah.
Reach, all that stuff. It matters.
It does. And it also points to the value of having young guys around is like they can literally grow in ways that you do not expect.
Yeah. As great as LeBron is, he ain't getting any taller.
Yeah, but
he's only going to shrink.
But whether you're talking about Max Christie, like Max Christie being a league average player next year, let's say that. Mm-hmm. Let's say, because this gets to, we had a really interesting comment from, and it's quite a long one, from RC Kim on the YouTube page today. This is in reaction to the D-Lo show that we did for Thursday, which I will say was not quite as heavily tilted to run him out of town on a rail than I thought it would be. There were more people who were like, you know what, he had a lot of good moments in the playoffs and he's worth keeping around at the right price, not 30 million, but maybe 20, and so on and so on. RC says this, and it was interesting, about D-Lo. He knows that even if he killed himself to improve every offseason, he might go from being like the 65th best player around in the league to maybe around 50th, which would have zero impact on his legacy or his standing in the league as a pretty good player. Again, lots more to this comment, and go check it out on the YouTube page. And I don't, again, it's similar thing. I don't even mean to talk to this like, is he the 65th best player or the 50th best player? No, that's actually probably a little high. I think when you talk about like Andrew Wiggins, you said was like 44. Like Wiggins is probably a better player than D'Lo, I think. Yeah. Would you agree with
traded
that?
For each other. Yeah, they were traded for
each
other.
Especially when you factor in defense.
Oh, yeah. No. I think Wiggins is better than D'Angelo Russell.
But let's say D'Lo is top 75 in the league. First of all, that player is actually much more expensive than anybody wants to really think about. That player will cost you $20 million at least.
He's 124 on the Ringers list.
Yeah. And look, he's not going to make $30 million again or whatever.
No, he's not.
But let's say that's the 100th best player or something like that, or the 95th. It's like once you get past like 75 through 125, sometimes is a matter of taste. Whether you're talking about Russell,
look, to put it quickly in perspective, sure. D'Lo is 124 in this ringer list. The players around him, Dylan Brooks, Markelle Fultz, who, if people aren't aware, he has really resuscitated his career.
A really nice season. Yeah.
He's Jared Vanderbilt, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Trey Murphy with the Pelicans, Quentin Grimes, Malik Monk, Kyle Lowry, Bobby Portis, Valanciunas.
I would say
these are useful players.
Right. I would personally put D'Lo ahead of some of those guys at least, but point is they're all useful NBA players.
Yeah.
And broadly, and again, this gets to the how you construct a team around LeBron and AD thing and why I think it's so important to bring somebody like D'Angelo Russell back. Let's say he's 90th, which doesn't leap off the page. Let's say Max Christie is league average last year, goes from somewhere below average, like pretty good for a 19-year-old, but below average, below league average in terms of his output performance and all that other kind of stuff. The difference between being in the 25th percentile and the 50th percentile is a massive boost to the Lakers. Having 2 or 3 guys who are in that 75 to 150 place, where Austin Reeves is now, absolutely, where D'Angelo probably is, where you hope Rui Hachimura ascends to. Not was not there going into this season. Small sample size, but the playoffs certainly indicated he could have that kind of value. What separates the good teams from the great teams, I think, isn't just their stars. It's how many of those guys do you have? How many of those 75 to 150 that aren't
Denver's
stars?
a perfect example of it. Denver's
Yes,
a great example of that.
And that's the kind of team that you need to build around LeBron and AD. Because as reluctant as I was when we started talking about this with before we got into Kyrie's Instagram, like I saw the value, like the utility of having Kyrie there. And if you could just isolate just one series and say the same kind of starting lineup, the same basic team, but Kyrie Irving's in there instead of D'Angelo Russell, hell yes, that makes a difference. But that's not the world we actually live in. Like if Kyrie is on the team, it means many, 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 many other people who are part of this rotation or potentially part of it for both the regular season and the playoffs aren't. Unless Kyrie just decides he's willing to play for $8 million a year or whatever. And I don't think that's a recipe for success, short-term or long-term with this team, beyond even the do you want to hitch your wagon to Kyrie long-term thing.
Well, the other thing too, though, with LeBron and where he ranks, in the NBA pecking order, there's been a lot of talk about Anthony Davis's shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. Zach Lowe was on ESPN's Get Up, and he ended up kind of on a soliloquy about how when it comes to Anthony Davis, the conversations often get unserious in his mind, and I think kind of accurately, in the sense that nobody ever brings up what he does defensively while getting into these hypercritical looks at his offense.
Right.
And, there is a discussion to be had, and you and I have had it about, Anthony Davis's inconsistency at the highest level of scoring. But at the same time, he averaged 26 points a game last season. Like, that's not nothing. He is one of the best scorers at his position in the league by a mile. It's basically like him, Jokic, Embiid, and everybody else. And in the meantime, what AD does defensively is among, if not the best in the league. But what I think gets lost in this conversation about Anthony Davis's scoring, and for a refresher, he was ranked 10th on this ringer list, is that his scoring really matters most because he's paired up with LeBron James, who we know needs this help at this stage of his career and for a preservation standpoint and all that. Like, if LeBron was still 31, 32, not only would nobody criticize Anthony Davis's scoring, they would talk about it as being unfair that a scorer like that is with LeBron James. The problem is specific to this pairing, where Anthony Davis is as an unquestioned number one offensive focal point, where he is in terms of that station, matters more specifically paired with LeBron than just about any other superstar in the league.
Yeah.
And look, if say like Austin Reeves can become like a consistent 20 point per score game next year, or Rui Hachimura can become that guy next year with the Lakers,
15 to 20 of those guys. Sure.
Yeah. Some of this stuff with Anthony Davis's scoring becomes less of an issue, but it's still a thing. Like the idea of being the guy who can get you those buckets in the most critical points of the most high leverage games. It matters most with Anthony Davis specifically because of where LeBron is. In a lot of ways, it's more about LeBron than AD.
Mm-hmm. It's all this, and we'll get into this. We're going to take Monday off for the holiday. We'll get back into this for Tuesday. All of this is relevant. I think it's a great point. Like the pairing of those guys, and I said this when we were talking earlier in the season. Like, do you trade them? I was like, not if your goal is to be good. You can trade them to blow it up and rebuild, but if you're good, like, you can't find players that are better than that combination by trading them. You just won't get it back. It won't happen. But you have to then understand the strengths and weaknesses of that pairing and build a roster around it accordingly. So we'll talk about that starting on Tuesday. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with 17,000 plus subscribers all of whom will be enjoying their holiday weekends, we hope, and we will see everybody on Tuesday.